And that one night was the catalyst that changed the entire trajectory of my life.
That's a sliding door moment.
Sliding door moment.
Imagine if you didn't go to the track that day. Welcome back to the Keegan and Company podcast. For those who are new to the show, my name is Keegan Hipgrave. And guys, if you haven't already, got to get you to jump over, give us a little like and subscribe, or whatever platform you listen to this podcast on, whether it's Apple, YouTube, Spotify. It's a great way for us to grow the podcast, grow the platform, and just have some incredible guests like I've got on today. In this episode, I'm joined by ultra marathon runner Erchana Murray-Bartlett. How are you?
Good. I'm good. I've got a coffee next to me.
And you're a coffee fan.
I'm a big coffee fan.
We linked on the Gold Coast Marathon. Got both privileged, got to be Gold Coast Marathon ambassadors. Very, very excited. And when we did one of the pre-promotional stuff, coffee came up. And I didn't know how much of a coffee fan you were.
Well, I'm from Melbourne, so it's kind of this underlying, I guess, association between Melbourne and coffee. And I'm not a coffee, I don't care. I'll drink any coffee. I mean, I've drank the worst coffee in the world.
Sure. Yeah.
As long as it's, caffeinated, I'm good. But yeah, I think we were asked what's our favourite cafe on the coast.
What'd you say? Somewhere in Burleigh, yeah?
Yeah, you don't, like we said, your postcode for coffee.
We were talking about that this morning because we obviously went and got a coffee. We went to Jefferson's on...
Shout out.
Shouldn't have shouted them out because they're already so busy as it is. And that's it's obviously like a little walking distance down here from the studio. We can roll in. Everyone's so lovely, but such good coffee.
It is good.
But you don't leave your postcode?
No, I did there was this cute little cafe that was inside the Bowls Club. What was it called? Salty Dog. But they've just moved.
Brody's. Yeah, one of the greats. Yeah.
It's amazing. He's moved to Nobby's, I think. But this Quest is probably up there.
We're so fortunate to be here. Yes. Like even at the cafe, one of the girls all due respect to Melbourne, loved Melbourne, almost moved to Melbourne at the end of last year. Yeah, but then I was in Sydney, came back to the Gold Coast, and we're here, we're rolling around, and I could have walked down there this morning in a t-shirt. The sun's coming up, it's beautiful. And one of these girls said that she's moving to Melbourne, and we're like, oh, why? We're so fortunate to be here on the Gold Coast.
Physical reaction, what?
Yeah. But it's I don't know. Melbourne's great, and because you did a couple years.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I've only been up here for on and off 4 years now. So most of my 20s was in Melbourne, and it does have its the running scene in Melbourne is incredible.
Really?
World-class athletes. I mean, the running clubs are just so big, so elite, and because there's so many people in a small city, there's just so much quality.
Yeah.
But yeah, winters.
And that's what I was going to say, because I imagine if you're doing a run club doing it in the city is probably not quite ideal, and then you throw the winters on there. You were there last week, you said it was 3 degrees. That doesn't seem like the prime. When I think of run clubs, go on Crumban Beachfront or the Gold Coast Beachfront. It's beautiful running.
Yeah. It's funny because when you live down there, it's just what you know, and so you still go. You're just wearing gloves, and it's just a different culture. You roll into a pub afterwards from mulled wine or a stout. You're not going for a cold lager. And the cross country season there, it's in full swing at the moment. It's just huge. And I don't know, it's something about just rolling through the mud and just finishing the day, or going to this pub and having this kind of hot soup or something afterwards. It definitely has its charm about it. But just the whole Monday to Friday, getting up at 5:30 in the blistering cold and wind to run, that's where you have to be a bit of a warrior.
Is there any trails in Melbourne?
There is, yeah, there is.
Do you have to go out?
No. So if you live in Clifton Hill, or I guess there's half of Melbourne where you pretty much back directly onto trails. And even in the north, you don't have to go far at all for trails. That is one thing I miss. Gold Coast has a lot of, I've now found some trails.
Yes, yeah.
When I first moved here, I was just running up and down the boulevard, and I was very much over the concrete. But that was just my lack of Gold Coast knowledge.
What's your preference, road running or trail running?
50-50. Yeah, 50-50. I've always raced the roads and run on the trails, but I'm doing a bit of both now. What about you?
I like trails. Yeah. I for those people who are listening, I'm obviously not a runner.
I disagree.
when we started doing some promo stuff for the marathon, I was a bit Honestly, I don't know why I'm here. Like, I think I'm here just for like the everyday person who can relate, because obviously, clearly, clearly not built to be a runner. But I really enjoy trail running. Don't get me wrong. I like running roads for like the community feel. Like, I love run clubs. We've got a really cool run club in Currumbin at Salt Social at Salt Mill. And like, love that community. But then I really enjoy going out onto a trail and then just like, I don't know, being immersed. There's something about being immersed in nature, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I on my run from the top of Australia to the bottom, I stayed off the road the entire time. The entire thing was on trails, and it ended up being 1,600 kilometers longer because, if you go straight down the Bruce, you just go down the road. But I was like, oh, F that. I'm going to head into the bush, because that's why I was out there, for the wilderness. So why not showcase the wilderness?
It's and these events are something that we're going to do today. For people who are listening, obviously Erchana's an incredible ultra marathon runner, and there's a few challenges that you've done like along the way, and we will get into it. But before we get into it, I do have to confess, like, I perforated my eardrum on the weekend, and so I can't hear out of my left ear. So if I go a bit back and forth, I'm glad we've actually got the headphones on, because when we were walking along this morning, I was just like, oh, I actually can't, like, even when our friends were on the left-hand side of it, I couldn't even hear them. Yeah.
How did you do this?
We're filming a clip for Movember on the weekend with some pro surfers, Sheldon Simpkins and Corbin Hutchins, and a good friend, Sam Zubovic. There, it was kind of like they just put out a mental health report, and just around like statistics around pretty much just men's mental health, but broke it down into different ethnicities, like Indigenous cultures, and it was actually a really cool report. But they're obviously trying to create awareness for it, so we're filming a video, pretty much just like mates coming together, surfing, coffee. Me and Sheldon did a podcast afterwards, but we were surfing beforehand. And it was like 2 foot. Like it wasn't even that big. And I just came down awkwardly, like on the water, and I just felt a little pop.
Oh.
And it sounds that bad. It's really not that bad. It's not as dramatic as what it sounds.
Sounds dramatic.
It was sore. But like, when you hold your nose and you blow out, it just blows like air out. Yeah, it's so how like you try and level your ear out. So and because I'm going to the States, UK and States on Tuesday, so I was like, oh well, does that like, is it going to be weird like going in a plane? Like,
Will it be weird going on a plane?
No, like I went to the doctor and they're like, nah, you're sweet. Because when you level out, when your ear level out, it actually is just going to push the air straight out of the hole, because there's like a perforation's like a little hole in the eardrum.
Is this forever? Or does
I think it like.
I know nothing about eardrums.
Neither did I until more recently.
Wow.
I think it's like 5 weeks, and it starts to heal over, and you'll be fine.
Wow. Okay. So stand on your right for a good conversation. Did you do your left ear?
Yeah, left ear. Yeah. But I mean the head.
No.
Sweet now.
Sign language, real quick.
Yeah. I'm glad that we're doing it with you and not someone I don't know. They'll be like, this is the most random podcast I've ever done.
I say.
I want to dive into it. I feel like the first like fitting question that comes to mind when you agree to come on is just like, why running? Like, you've got so many different sports that I'm sure you could dive into. Like, where did the love for running come from?
Yeah, and running was late. I was late to the running game. So I played soccer pretty much through my teenage years, and even in my early 20s, I went to the US on a soccer scholarship and the UK on a soccer scholarship, and that was it. I was like set in stone, I will be a Matilda. Kind of regret not sticking with it.
Oh, wow. They just...
No. But yeah, I always ran to keep fit, and I lived in country Victoria. So it kind of was the only thing to do was climb trees and run. And I used to find these little like goat tracks and just follow them. And I had really stressed out parents, and there's 4 kids. Like, I'm one of 4 girls. And so they sort of just shoot us off.
They were just working a lot?
It's working a lot. Yeah, and there's just 4 of us. So they're just like, oh, don't want to deal with...
Farming?
No, just normal country suburban.
Gotcha.
So I just used to kind of go and explore and make friends and stuff, and running was how I got from A to B, to your friend's house or
yeah.
to anywhere. So I just did it to keep fit, and then finished my soccer career. I think I was about 23, and missed the social element of sport, and I was like, I just want to do something that's different. And where I lived in Melbourne, it was like 200 meters from Collingwood Athletics track, and I thought, all right, I'll go go and see what it's like, this running business. And I think they were doing a session like 400s. And I was like, that seems weird. Why are we just running around a track like this? But I did it and I fell in love with it and met some really cool people. And that one night was the catalyst that changed the entire trajectory of my life.
That's a sliding door.
Sliding door moment.
Imagine if you didn't go to the track that day.
Exactly. The guy that was running the session, he ended up being my coach for maybe a decade. His name's Liam. I finished the 400. I got to the session and he's like, hey, we're split into 2 packs. You run with the second pack. You know, it was my first night. Great advice. And I finished first in that pack and he's like, just jump in the first pack for the next one. And I finished first of that one too. And he's like, where have you been all my life?
Yeah. But you would have had such a great foundation, playing.
Yeah, of course.
Huge foundation.
Yes.
How does the pre-seasons or training differ between like going through like a soccer pre-season versus like consistently running?
It's very different because pretty much from that night I dived into running as much as I could. Soccer is very much on or off. So you're off season, you're off partying. Everyone comes in for the first few months and you've got some, a little bit of weight to lose. And, it's probably similar to what you're used to. Running's a bit more consistent throughout the year. You're always doing it, but it's just a little bit on or off. But like that first night, I thought I was the best runner in the world, and you get to your first comp, you're like, I am the worst runner in the world. Like the polarity between where I was and where I needed to be was huge. But it's a very different fitness, soccer and running. Soccer is very fast, short sprints. I was about 8 to 10 kilos heavier in muscle just from, playing a very impact-based sport versus just, running. So my body shape changed over the next few years to be a better runner, I guess.
So after you did the first session, what's the timeline between I actually really like this and then wanted to start competing?
Pretty quick. And that was probably my coach being like, come and join Collingwood Arts.
Yeah.
But the good thing about running is you don't have to be, anyone can compete. You just end up somewhere else in the field. So I would have been kind of middle of the pack for at least 2 years before I slowly kind of worked it out. But I loved it. I just loved how it was a team sport because in Victoria, the way it works is the first 6 runners of the event get points. So you're all accumulating points for your club. So it had the sporting competition element that I missed from soccer or football, but it was kind of, you're also just still fighting for yourself as well, which I really enjoyed. Because like yourself, we've both come from team sport backgrounds. So there's that team element that, is really special.
That's something that I think a lot of players, because like my day job is I work with the Players Association, especially guys who are transitioning out of the game. So that's a huge one.
Yeah.
It's like missing that the connection piece and even talking to guys, even lived experience, like for myself, like when you're in an environment and you'd know it perfectly, like for years, like you were doing it till you were what, 23?
Yeah.
And then you come back and you're like, oh, well, like now what? But that's why I kind of like the sorry, so unprofessional of me. My phone is buzzing. I thought it was like, oh, maybe it's your phone. Oh, that's so embarrassing. I'm definitely gonna edit that out, or if it's funny, I'll just leave it in. I like it a bit rogue, but that's a huge one, and like coming out, and then that's what I was getting at. I think the run clubs and like that sense of community. I think that's so cool. When you started competing, what are the events that you
shorter because
that's
yeah. The max I ran was 10K. So it was the 1500, 800. I was awful at the 800. 1500, 3K, 5K, and 10K. Yeah, and cross country, which was never more than 12K. So yeah, it took me 9 years till I ran long time, like 7, 8 years before I ran my first marathon. And as a run coach now, it's something that I try to reiterate to runners because running is booming.
Yeah.
Right now, and everyone wants to finish a marathon, and I'm like, it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do. Don't be down on yourself if you're feeling overwhelmed by these 30K long runs because, most people traditionally would train for years before they would even attempt this.
Yeah. But do you think it's just like it's a normalized thing? Like people are seeing so many people doing it and it's like, oh, well, if they can do it, like surely I can do a marathon.
Yeah. And it's like, what gravitated to you to do the marathon? Because you come from that background of not running as much. I mean, you're fit, but
not that fit though. Like, no, mates enjoying it, and then I think it's because you see like people like yourself doing these crazy events, and I went down the rabbit hole of like listening to David Goggins. I loved his book, these ultra marathon runners, Rich Roll, like, and I was like, oh well, like if they can do a couple 100-kilometer race, like surely I could do like a 30 or 40-kilometer race. But that's like me being super naive, you know, and like you say, like it's hard to do.
And that's why like anyone that finishes a marathon, like even when you get to the start line and you put in a solid block of training, like we need to take a step back and realize just how incredible that is. Because it's not normal to run 42 Ks. No. It's very hard.
So how do you, because you said you're a run coach, you like coach people for marathon? For
any distance, yeah.
What are the things that you're telling them if someone was like just about to start their training? I want to do a marathon next year, Erchana. What should I be looking at?
I'm split. I ask them if it's something they're really set on. And if they're really set on it, it's not my place to, that's an awesome goal and I will help you. And if it's a year away, 1,000,000%. I usually try to have a 16-week window training. So I do have a lot of people that come to me and say, hey, I've got 6 weeks till Sydney. I'm like, oh, I just don't think that's safe because you'll get injured and that will be a reflection on my coaching when it's actually a reflection of a not enough training. It's just, you just need to respect it. I do try and get people to do a bit of speed work and build that speed foundation first. So focus on a 10K or a half. The faster you run, you become an efficient runner, just running a bit quicker, and then layering on the speed and the endurance after that. But I guess it depends. If your goal is sustainable running with a marathon in the future, then let's build up to it. If you just want to smash that bucket list goal, and then just get on with your life, sure, we can do it.
I did the City to Surf a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And that was my first that was the longest I'm pretty sure I've ever ran before.
Yeah.
It was just like a spare of the moment thing. Let's just do it. I was doing like little 5-6Ks out and we did it. And I met this guy and then talk about like community and meeting people. I met this guy on the start line. His name was Ben. And we just ran the whole way together. Had so many like similar interests. I was like, man, this is my dude. Like, this is my guy. And then afterwards, we're like, let's do another one. And then he mentioned the UTA, the one in the Blue Mountains.
Yep.
He said, there's a 22K. Let's do that. And I was like, perfect. Like 14 to 22. I'm sure that's probably a nice progression.
It is. It's a great progression.
Sold out.
Yeah, very popular.
50K. So he's just like, there's a spot in the 50K. Do you want to do the 50? And he's like, yeah, sweet. So we signed up for it. And I think we only had like maybe 8 weeks, 10 weeks of training. And I was like, this isn't going to not going to be safe, but what's the best thing we can do? So we just like did a bunch of hills. I leaned on a run coach who said the exact same thing as you. He's just like, not safe, but if it's like a bucket goal thing to do, like get your leg weights in, get some hills in because you're just going to have to grind it out, which is probably a big thing. And something that I didn't know, leg weights.
Yeah.
Totally. How much do you incorporate that into your training?
So lots, heaps. Strength is, I think, one of the most important thing with particularly endurance. Running is super important. Strength is super important for injury prevention. So yeah, before, when I knew that I was going to do this giant run, I was running probably about 150 kilometers a week and I was probably going to the gym once a week and swimming once a week. When I knew that I had this big run, I backed off the running by about 60K a week. And I went to the gym 3 to 4 times. And you'd think, oh, you're off to do a 6,000K run, run more, be fitter. But it was the exact opposite. I knew that the load and fitness was there. I just didn't know if I was strong enough to withstand the force of it. So yeah, gymmed pretty much 4 times a week and backed off the running and it worked. How
much is upper body versus lower body? Because like everyone says like, yeah, lower body's obviously it, but do you have to have like some sort of upper body strength?
You have to have core strength and trunk strength. So because if you are weak through your core, you will start to slouch and your technique will go. Arm strength, we've all got like dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Like,
you're not doing bicep curls in there? We wouldn't get along in the gym.
I go to the gym and I'm like, I can't do a single like chin up, but I'm like squatting, my body weight.
Sure. Yeah, you mentioned like obviously I'm keen to talk about these big races that we've discussed, but what's the because you went from doing the 1500s, the 10Ks, 15Ks. At what point do you say, I want to do something big? Like I want to do like you went and did the marathon.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get from doing marathons to like these 100-kilometer races? That's something that I'm super keen to.
Yeah, yep. So I was on the racing scene in Victoria when I was running marathons, and it was a bit of the universe in a way. So I had no intention of doing. I raced the trails for fun, but my focus was road running. Like I wanted to make a team. Like I think I did the half of Victoria, but I wanted to make an Aussie team. And I was going all around the world to the majors. I went to Berlin and I got an injury. I got at 37 Ks and so I had to pull out of the race. London, but we had terrible weather and it was just a headwind the entire way. So my time wasn't what I wanted it to be. I think I was fourth in that race. Then I went to Tokyo, but that was March of 2020. And like literally as I got to Tokyo, I was in the city and they called the race off for COVID.
Wow.
So I just had this series of unlucky races that didn't reflect my actual fitness at the time. Yeah. And then we plunged into lockdown and I can't sit down at the best of times.
Were you in Melbourne in lockdown?
Yeah, and I'd just gone through a breakup. So my 30th birthday was March the 2nd. And then I think my partner and I would be together for 7 years. We broke up on like the 12th of March. And then I was like, screw you, man. I'm going to live my own life and get my own apartment in Flemington, which ended up being the epicenter of COVID. And so I was in this on my own for the first time in 7 years. Couldn't run, couldn't leave the house for more than an hour a day. It was winter. It was just the darkest place I've ever been. And I needed something to just grow and to fixate on to get myself out of that negative headspace.
That's so good that you're conscious of that though, because it'd be so easy just to go down that little spiral. Like I'm sure everyone was on the piss during COVID.
Yeah.
Especially being by yourself and isolated. That'd be the worst for your head.
And it was just awful. Like try dating in COVID, right? So you're allowed, this was the progression. You could meet someone in a park for a 30-minute walk. You had to wear a mask and you're wearing hoodies because it's 2 degrees.
Yeah.
And then it's the next step, if you think you like them, was to go, all right, do you want to come over? Because you can't go out for dinner. You can't go for a cafe. So it's that walking or going straight to this stranger's house where you're so it was a weird time.
It's a weird time for dating, yeah.
Weird time.
Melbourne, yeah.
Yeah. And so you don't really know what they look like. You don't know if they've got a good smile or you can't see their face.
Because I imagine you could cover up a heap with the mask.
Yeah, and a hoodie.
The hoodie, it's this guy might be good looking. But you never know.
Just don't know. And so, yeah, it's funny looking back on it now, my life then versus now. But yeah, so, and I went down a rabbit hole of just watching YouTube, as we all did. My rabbit hole was Bo Miles. We just went on these awesome backyard adventures. And I was like, that's what I did growing up. He grew up near me. There's a few others. And I was like, why am I not doing this? And I knew why, because, life gets in the way and I was fixated on road racing. I'm like, that's my roots. I grew up in the bush. I should be out there. And yeah, sort of developed the idea in just because of that seismic shift in the universe.
So wild. So what was the big first race?
What was the first race?
And it might not even been a race. It might have just been a big run that you just did, because obviously it doesn't have to be a race. You just go run by yourself for a long way.
That's something I've always done. Yeah. So I used to just drive up to the Grampians and do the giant loop up there, or yeah, I used to, my house, my family childhood home backed onto the Warburton Rail Trail, which is 42 kilometres into the abyss. I used to just run that and I'd race I used to leave on Sunday and race my parents there because I would drive there for breakfast. And so I would run down. So I used to do a lot of that stuff.
How far was that?
It's in the 30s. Yeah, it was a lot for a younger
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've always challenged myself. Even as a tiny kid, I would try and race down to the bridge on my street and back. And I remember thinking it was the furthest run ever. And you go back as an adult and it's 1,500 meters. But I've always set myself these challenges. But yeah, obviously tip to toe was next level.
What run me through? Because I'm sure the logistics behind that was insane.
Oh, it was insane.
Numbers, how'd you get there? Give us a little bit of a background.
So, yeah, the run itself was, my original plan was just to run from Cape York to Melbourne, and I didn't have a structure. It was just run whatever you can every day and just get there. But I also, I was working at the time, but needed financial backing to do it, as you all do. And I was kind of putting the idea to market. And it's become very popular now, these runs. But when I started 10 days before Ned, but we were the only two, and we didn't even know of each other at the early days. We were the only ones kind of doing this thing. And so people were like, oh, okay. And so we didn't really, like, for me personally, I wasn't getting any sponsorship. And I can't remember why. I think my partner was like, hey, have you looked at the Guinness World Record for most consecutive marathons? And I was like, that's cool. It was 106 and I'm going to run further than anyway. Yeah. And so we thought, all right, well, why don't we layer that into the run and go from the top to the south, which was the original goal of mine, and then do a marathon a day and try and break the record. Yeah. And as soon as we kind of pitched that idea, it worked. I started getting enough sponsorship to make it viable.
How wild is that? Like, once you've actually got a set structure, instead of just saying like, look, we're just going to run as far as we can.
Yeah.
Because there's something about you end up doing 150 marathons over the 150 days, which is insane to think about. But once you've got that concept, brands start coming on board. It starts becoming a thing. I'm sure you probably documented the run as well.
Yeah, and that was my first big lesson in every big idea. Every big idea needs to be partnered with a second big idea, and that second big idea needs to be a marketing idea. You need your story to resonate with the world, and if it doesn't resonate, it's a marketing. Like, it's marketing 101 without, I don't have any marketing background, but I realized then and there how important that was. But it also put an insane amount of pressure on me because I had never run 2 marathons in a row. And here I was being like, oh, I can just run what I can every day. And now I had, without fail, the pressure to run that 42.2, rain, hail, shine, broken down car, broken body, no matter what.
Yeah, far out. So you've got the concept. So you hadn't started, like, you pitched the ideas to brands before.
Yeah, about 8 months prior, we started organising logistics. Yeah. And I had a few basics that I needed. I needed an off-road camper van to live in, because if we didn't have somewhere to live, it was going to be impossible. And these campers are like 60, 70 grand. They're not cheap. And it needed to be off-road because like I said, we went very remote for most of it. Once I got that, and once I got enough to cover food and water, I was like, screw it, let's go.
Gotcha. So you didn't have a start date? It's like once you had all the sponsorship, that's when you were ready to go?
I had a start date and I bit off a really big chunk and just chewed really quickly.
Yeah. Gotcha. How big was your team? What did the team look like?
Tiny. The team, for 90% of it, was just me and my partner. So, skeletal. But I preferred that. I'm a very social person, but I'm also a bit of a people pleaser. And I did have other people joining for sections, and I actually felt almost like I needed to make their experience fun. And I remember feeling a lot of pressure, particularly in the afternoons when I was cooked and had a lot of other responsibilities. I was like, oh, they're not doing anything. I'll make sure they're included. And it just took so much energy out of me. I did have my parents for the first 1,400 Ks, which was the Cape section. I think they were worried that it was so remote that I needed some extra assistance. And it worked out well because it meant that my partner Rye was filming and documenting, but he was also packing up the camper every day, driving 40 to 45 Ks south, setting it up again. And it meant that at the time, Mum could ride with me because there was no drink taps, there was no stores. It was just red dirt for as far as the eye could see. And she would carry, 5 litres of water and all the Cliff bars and all of that stuff. So that worked out well. And then after that, we're just rogue.
Far out. That's so, I feel there's so many like little parts of where I wanted to go. Like even like with your family, I've gotten to know Ned recently, and he talked about when you're obviously under a huge amount of like stress and pain and inflammation, like,
yeah,
but the pressure between his like his family, like and his partner at the time, like there was a lot of like not arguments, but like you're obviously putting so much stress on yourself, and you're not your normal self. Did you find that you went through parts where you're like, this isn't me, and started to become angry at your partner or your family? Yeah.
So to put it into perspective, I met my partner, and he was another catalyst for this. So I was sitting on the hill in Bellyheads, and we just met there, and I don't know, I was like a bit over men at the time. I was like,
just on Melbourne.
I've just come out of this Melbourne shitstorm, and I was like, oh, I've got this dream of running the length of the country, and thinking he'd be like, all right, and just like back off. And he's like, oh, this was 2021, so just after COVID. And he's like, oh, I'm a filmmaker and I've lost all of my, like, I'd love to make this documentary. Can I join you? And obviously there was a romantic relationship.
I was going to say, did that bring you guys closer together? Yeah.
He had his own purpose out there. He wanted to make this doco, and he filmed it and he did all the content. So he had his own job, But because it was such a new couple, he had this really difficult kind of, he's like, all right, if something goes wrong and I start crying, which was regularly, or, just exhausted, his first reaction is like, I'm a new partner. I need to comfort her. But his filmmaker brain was like, I need to film this. You're attacked by a croc, camera or say, but so
Good content though.
and so he was constantly at it. I noticed a flick. I reckon halfway through it got a lot of traction, and he started completely disregarding me for the content. He's like, this is more important.
That's so hard to do though. Like both brains going back and forth.
Yeah.
Oh.
So we did have a little bit. Surprisingly, it was just a lot of fun. Like I'm looking back with rose-colored glasses for sure, but I only really remember so many memories. Like there was this day with my dad was up there north, and I'd gone out running, and I came back and he was like eating a barramundi, like an entire, and I was like, what? And he'd gone and just caught this barramundi with his hands, like a wild, like Bear Grylls. And I was like, just a weird like thing you'd only do up in the cave.
Yeah.
That's not what I would have spent my morning doing. But just like weird memories like that where I'm like, oh, that was a really good family bonding experience.
Yeah.
In a way.
It's a fresh barra. That's so sick. I'm a big fan.
Hand caught.
Do you think about that, especially like with your races, because it's hard? Like even I look at things that us regular folk do, a hard thing like a marathon or a trail run, or even like you look back at like a footy career. Like these things are hard, but over time you look back and it slowly starts to like the pain slowly starts to like disintegrate, disappear, and you look back and you're like, oh well, that was actually a really cool thing. Is that something that like I guess propels you to do the next thing?
Totally. Yeah. So after I finished tip to toe, I got a lot of stick for not doing Tasmania. They're like, you haven't really run the East Coast, and I was like,
hang on,
to Melbourne.
Hang on. Yeah.
I even remember saying, I couldn't say I ran the length of Australia because they're like, you haven't, you've just ran me. And anyway, I was like, fair call. I don't want to disregard. I got no hate for the Tasmanians. I love Tasmania.
Would you have run
Yes. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I was like, all right, I'll run Tasmania just to shut up the haters. No, also it's my favorite. It's one of my favorite states. And I remember 3 days into that and I was like, I remember why I don't, this is so hard. And I sent a voice message to my partner. He's like, record this because you always say afterwards that you're done. I've got this voice message on his phone being like, I do not want to do these extra long multi-day events again.
Yeah.
And then day 3 into the speed project, he played it and he's like, say it again.
Yeah. And then, but where's your head at when you listen to it?
I was like, oh yeah, but it's so good when you
That's so cool. I even when we were talking in the lead up to this, you're like, the hardest thing isn't getting to the finish line. The hardest thing is getting to the start line.
Absolutely. Yeah. The start line is, the logistics. And I get so many amazing people reaching out on social media being like, oh, how did you do it? How did you have the courage to quit your job? How did you have your courage to ask your partner to quit his job and get sponsorship? And I didn't do an amazing job of getting sponsorship. Like we bootlegged it mostly. I had enough to make it viable, which I'm super grateful for. But yeah, if you can get your body right, strong, fit, cover it logistically, cover it financially, and still raise money, I think that's an incredible win.
Because you think like when people think about these races, I'm sure they're probably just thinking about how hard it is physically and probably mentally as well. Disregard all the sponsorship, you're creating content, even just the pressure, like I'm sure the pressure of actually like setting yourself out to do something and the balls to be like pulling the trigger on it, like it's got to be wild. What do you tell the crew who are thinking about doing something like this?
I say do it. It's not just like YOLO, but it's like you really do only have one chance, and who cares if you fail? Like you're going to put more pressure on yourself than everyone else is putting on you. And I felt that on day 17, I had this calf tear and I'd done it on the corrugations, and I, for the first time, was like, oh man, this is not bearable. And I remember feeling the weight of my parents who had taken their long service leave, my partner who had come up, every sponsor that was expecting us to go well, the people that had given us the camper trailer. Although we found out after the fact that the camper trailer didn't expect me to finish, that actually sold the camper 3 months into it would return it in 3 months.
Thanks for the trust, guys. Lucky they didn't tell you at the start. Yeah.
Like, we've actually sold this, so if you could like hurry this.
Don't rush me.
I know, and that was super great. Like we were so proud of me for finishing, but it was so funny. So yeah, there was a lot of moments where I felt the weight of it in so many different ways, whether it was physically or there was a time where my fundraising goal dipped below what I wanted it to be. And I remember thinking in that moment, even if I do achieve this, monumental physical task, the run's not having any impact for the cause. So what was the point? So you have that kind of emotional turmoil and physical turmoil, but still, didn't regret for a second starting. So if it's something you want to do, people will support you, people will get around you, just do it.
But you can even apply that to just anything that people want to do. Like it doesn't have to be a physical challenge, I imagine. Like even like starting that side business or starting the thing, like I'm big on doing things that you love. Yeah. Like I feel like everything that I'm doing in my life, like I'm very fortunate. Like I get to study psychology. I get to do this, which I absolutely adore.
Podcast is the same, right? Were you nervous at the concept of starting the podcast?
Oh my God. So I flirted with the idea for years.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit of imposter syndrome where I was just like, oh, I don't have anything to say.
Yeah.
And then once I flipped it to be like, no, it's not about you. Like, it's not about you talking. It's about you learning. And so I go into these conversations with like a very curious lens. Like before I start a podcast, I think be present, be calm, be curious. And so when we're going to the podcast, like I want to learn and I want to push these messages, the tools, the strategies, what you've learned out to the people who are listening to this. And then once I changed that, then it was fine. But the first 10 podcasts probably sucked.
Everything's going to suck. Like everything at the start's going to suck. The first kind of 20 reels we put out were going to suck. You just got to find your audience. But if you had one podcast dream guest, who would it be?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
Like people ask all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it's so hard.
Would it be an athlete? Or would it be like a...
This is such a funny thing because obviously this is a mental health and sport podcast. Yeah. Like my background is sport and don't get me wrong, I like sport, but I'm curious about so many other things outside of sport. Like I love business, I love cooking, I love surfing, I love outdoors and camping. We talked about that before.
Psychology.
And then I always think well, how is this going to progress? Like I want to say super niche in this thing because sport's a great vehicle. I feel like they're great role models. I looked up to sporting athletes so much. So if they can be seen talk about their own struggles and vulnerabilities, then makes it okay for everyone else, and that's kind of the theme of it. But then you start thinking about other things as well. But dream guest, I don't know. I don't know, probably someone in the surfing industry or maybe one of the Matildas, that'd be sick. Like Sammy Kerr would be an epic chat.
Or Mary Fowler.
Fowler, actually. Yeah, stay tuned. There might be something.
Hey!
I don't know. There might be something later in the year.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, but that's I love that. It's because outside looking in, it seems like everything that you're doing is things that you love.
Yeah.
It falls in line with your purpose, and I'm sure you're probably values as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I do a few keynote talks, and my topic that I love to talk about that is turning your passion to activism. So it doesn't matter what you do. I run, but you don't have to run. Whatever you, it's about transforming and having the tools and the mental tool set to take what you love doing, whether it's surfing or piano or singing or hiking or and turning that to make positive change. Because I think that a lot of people want to do things in the world, they just don't know how, and things feel so overwhelming, and we just feel like this one person that doesn't have an impact, but we really do. And if everybody did a little thing, it would make such a big difference. So I'm a big advocate for doing the little things to make the big things matter.
You said turn it into positive impact, not a job.
No, well, it depends. It depends on what you want to do. I did my run for the environment because I'm a big fan of conservation, but I have a friend in the US who ran 100 marathons in 100 days to kickstart his business. So it doesn't matter what you're doing or whether you want to see the change. It's just, you can use your passion in, I guess, a more, constructive way if you want.
What do you say in the keynote? How do you get there?
It's a few things, and we probably don't have the time to go through all the steps, but the key ones would be, briefly, the key ones would be having Yeah, what we talked about was just starting, you know. Firstly, structuring your why. What is your why and what do you want to achieve? So you've got a clear vision, because when it gets really tough, those outside influences and I guess hurdles come in, you need to have that mental clarity. Practicing gratitude is a really big one, just being really grateful for what you're working for and the fact that you can work towards it. It's building that mental resilience. So when things go tough, well, when it gets hard, and you know, a run is a really example because it gets tough while you're in that run. When you do get through it, you then go, okay, let's not just forget that I just got through that. Let's use that knowledge to build a resilience brick, and you put it on your resilience wall. And then so the next time it gets tough, you're like, oh, but I got through that only a week ago. I can do it. I know I can. And then you build yourself another brick.
Is it kind of like building evidence, like
Yeah.
and you get confidence from doing it before?
Yes. Yes.
I think that's something that I've probably learned in the last couple years. Is just like you don't know what you can't do unless you've done it.
Yeah.
You know, like, and you go back and you see, like, even like going through your first breakup.
Yeah.
Like, wild example. I don't know why I'm using this example, but it's just,
I know.
but I'm sure it's relatable. It's just like, oh my God, like I don't know how I'm going to get through this. But once you've done it and you know, do it again, I'm sure it's just like, well, I've got through the first time, and apply that scenario to anything. I think building confidence, and then also when you're training, it's like, oh, I've done a 10K before. I know I can do it.
I know I can do. Yeah. I know I can do a 12K or a 15K. Absolutely.
Start like pushing the barrier a little bit. Yeah, that's unreal.
And I think the other one is learning that no is not a personal thing. You're going to hear these things in life, and it's not just for, say, getting sponsorship or running. You're going to hear no in, potential relationships or like, you know, in so many various factors in life.
Podcasts. Like, I'm glad you said yes to this podcast.
But that's a great example. People are going to say no, and it's not a reflection on you. It's they just don't have time in their calendar, or, you know, they can't make it physically, or there's like something else going on. So I think I learned, you know, probably to get the sponsorship that I got, I would have had hundreds of no's, and you just have to learn that doesn't mean that your project's not valid, or it doesn't have, you know, a right to exist. It's just that it doesn't fit in with that specific. Yeah, it doesn't. It's just not the collaboration that's going to work for you.
So when you're pitching certain ideas or things, because obviously they align with your values, you try not to take it personally when someone says no. Because that's easier. Because that's easier said than done.
I mean, some really clear ones where you're like, why can't you see this?
Yeah.
I mean, it's natural to feel, but I guess what I mean is just that's not going to discourage you. It shouldn't, and sometimes, you know, we're all natural, but it shouldn't discourage you. Just there'll be another one out there.
But then also on the flip side, when you need to say no to things, is that a matter of conserving energy and time? Because like obviously time's super valuable. I'm very grateful that you've taken the morning off to come in here this morning.
It's been great.
Tough coffee, beautiful. But like but I imagine that's probably something that you've had to do as well, is say no, because you'd have so many like podcast opportunities, speaking engagement, running events. I'm sure a heap of crew are hitting you up to do things. Is that something you're conscious of?
Yeah, and it was at the start. So off the back of Tip to Toe, all these wild and weird opportunities came up, and I remember not knowing the best path forward. And I work with the Minerva Network, and I got connected through them after the event, and it's essentially a female networking support. It's incredible. And they align you with a mentor. And this mentor, she's incredible. She pretty much said, let's work out what your pillars are. And so for me, it was running, the environment, and, you know, my business, which is run coaching and nutrition. So she goes, if it doesn't align with those three pillars, then we say no.
Really?
Yeah. And there's obviously exceptions, but when you have limited time, just think back to what are your pillars. And it's the same for because I get asked to do a lot of, you know, pro bono or free things as well. And I'm like, okay, let's think. Is it, if it's for the environment, or if it's for running, or if it's for nutrition, I'm probably going to say yes. If it's for a completely different left, that's when I think about it and see if it still fits in. And sometimes you do things just because you want to help, and that's fine too. But yeah, that's my kind of litmus test.
I really love that. And because you talked about, especially in your keynote, you talked about your why.
Yeah.
Is your why the three things, or have you broken it down into like a sentence or a saying? Like what's the why?
My why on the big run was for at-risk Australian wildlife. So I wanted to raise $10 per kilometre that I would run raise money and awareness for this specific cause. The why was essentially extinction as a choice, and we don't need to see these animals become extinct. So it was very specific, which is a little bit different to the general world where I think it's more my pillars. But I think for a specific expeditions, I would have, a one sentence why that carries you through.
You also did a race more recently that I want to touch on. The Vegas race.
Yeah.
Can we touch on that? Because before, when we first started doing the Gold Coast Marathon ambassadorship, you were saying how you're going overseas to do this crazy run. I was like, well, let's catch up and do a podcast when you get back.
Yeah.
First of all, can you describe this run? How long it is? What did it look like? Because I was fucking blown away. To be honest, like,
It's called the Speed Project, and I've been following it on social media for years.
yeah.
It's so wild. And they've only been doing it solo for a few years. And obviously I gravitated to that because it's a really long way and it just sounds almost impossible. But so there's 23 of us, and we started at Santa Monica Pier in LA, and there was no rules, and it's just the first person to touch the Vegas sign. So I mean, you obviously you can't cheat.
You can't get in the car. You got to
Still rules, but you got to run it, and you got to run the entire thing. Yeah. So we would pull up. If I slept for a few hours, you'd literally just pull up, and then you'd sleep in the van, and then you'd keep going. But it was directly through Death Valley.
So you can't get in the car to go off to have a sleep in a bed or anything?
You can, but you have to start back where you.
Yeah, you should, of course. Yeah.
So you can. There was one person who stayed in hotels, but awful choice because we're in the desert. So it'd be such a long trek to go out to to a hotel to then come back. We had this luxurious RV. It had like a shower, and I was so drawn into that, and I was like lucky enough to have it sponsored. But on day 3, when you're following this sandy road, the RV couldn't get down it. Yeah. So I was like a bit screwed. And I watched some of the other runners with their off-road, Jeeps just kind of following them the whole way through the desert. Yeah. And we had to go such big stretches.
Yeah.
Before water or food. And you never really were confident as to where the next rendezvous point was. Yeah, it was a wild race.
Gotcha. And because it was 500K.
500Ks. I ended up doing 493. So I managed to squeeze, because it's about the way you go.
That's what I mean. And then how do you figure out which is the fastest way? Is it just whatever you figure out?
Yeah, I downloaded the Strava of last year's record holder, and so I had her way. But then I changed it because for whatever reason, as I said, we had an RV and it couldn't go that way. So I had to go a different way. And you literally just cross your fingers.
When you go into these events, do you want to win these events? Do you just want to finish these events? Like, what's a dream outcome for you?
I'm sure I would have definitely tried to win. I had to make my ankle, the front of my shin, got like an overuse injury, and it swelled up. And on day 3, I think I remember finishing at like 9 p.m. and my foot literally wouldn't fit into a shoe. Like it was so, yeah. And so the day 4, I like winced through it, and day 5, it was just way too painful to even run. I couldn't extend or lift my foot. And so I had to hike, like speed walk the last 40 hours, and that dropped me down the list. But I mean, I'm proud of myself for getting through that and still finishing.
So tough. There's no way I could do that. I look at ultra marathon running as probably like one of the hardest things because not to compare the two at all, but we did I'll tell you the story and then I'll come back of why I'm talking about it. It's just like we did a 150K walk from from Sydney to Newcastle, right? And we do about 50K a day. And you wake up the next day and you're so sore. And that's my level of fitness, I imagine.
It's a long way, 50Ks.
It's a long way. But when you wake up in the morning, you've got blisters, like your feet are sore. And that was probably the first time since footy where I've had the thought of I'm actually not sure if I'll be able to get through the next day. Like even going into some football games or even being in a football game, like remember tearing my AC on my shoulder in a tackle, and we were down on trips and I just had to finish the game. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to finish the game. Same with that walk. And in the walk, it's just like you just keep walking. It's just like literally one step in front of the other. Look at girls and guys like you who are doing these 100-kilometer races. I couldn't imagine the pain you're in. That's why I say, wow, you're tough. Like, how do you push through that pain barrier? Because I imagine it's probably solid. Or do you reckon it's like a similar thing because you've done it so many more times and you're a bit more fitter than us?
Really good question. I don't know if I have the answer, but it probably is a combination of all of those. I was in this on tip to toe. I didn't get injured for the last 100 days. Like, it was bloody tough, but I didn't have to fight this. And I remember thinking, this is something I've never, into the speed project when my ankle was like blown out. I was like, okay, this is something that I've never had to push through before. Can I do it? And it was a new challenge for me because for me, running is a comfortable hard, like it's a comfortable, uncomfortable. I know what it feels like. And so this was something new. I was like, all right. And also I was 340K in and I was like, I don't want to waste running 340Ks to not run to the finish.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I remember letting go of the race. Like, I remember having to physically let go of how much was in front of me and just having to think, just now get there. I remember having that mental shift and I remember because I was very disappointed on day 4 that I could no longer run at the speed that I was running, and I was getting really angry and frustrated.
Yeah.
A bit toxic in the team. And yeah, I remember Alex came out with me and we were hiking into this, just the desert, just us and the Joshua trees. Yeah. And we did have that discussion about, okay, let's just get there. And it did take a big weight off my shoulders. But I don't know. I think there's something ingrained in me where I'm really stubborn and I don't like quitting.
Yeah. yeah.
And that could have just been literally all it was.
Yeah, fair enough. That's fair enough.
Lots of people did. 5 people of the 23, only 17 finished.
Oh,
So it's really hard.
it's yeah, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Have you had any you've had DNFs? Did not finish?
Yeah, in road races.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, lots. I don't know, because my goal back then was not to just finish the marathon. I'd done that plenty of times.
Yeah.
To get time. And if you run a marathon, you need to really respect the recovery. It takes 3 months, sometimes 2 to 3 months to get yourself back to your physical fitness. If you race a marathon, you wouldn't really run properly for weeks afterwards. And if you're racing and you have a certain time frame to get a time in, it's sometimes smarter for the pros and even like the semi-elites and to call it if they know they're not going to get their time, so they don't lose that time to reload for the next one.
Gotcha. Just on the Vegas trip.
Yeah.
I saw you guys had a really good party afterwards.
Oh, so good.
I was following you on socials, like you guys are hanging by the pool drinking. I'm like, what is doing? I was like, how's the recovery on this? Just by the way.
There was 2 cool things about the speed project, that party, and also you don't win prize money, but everybody that gets involved. And so we were only 23 solo, but there was 900 really participants because the relay is the famous race. And everyone puts their time on a $5 note that they think's going to win. Like, we all guess what the winning time will be, put on a $5 note, get to Vegas, and whoever gets the closest time has to take it to the roulette table and put it on either red or black.
Oh.
It was so cool.
Yeah.
And this year the guy guessed the time exactly, put it on black, but it landed on red, lost everything.
How much money was it?
Thousands.
But then, like, if he won it, is that just a matter of just goes back on the bar, everyone just parties?
It's up to him. Yeah.
Surely there's a bit of pressure. There's a bit of pressure there.
But we did just party. The party was amazing. That's what's cool about it. There was at the Fontainebleau, I think, and it was. But I was like, guys, crew. There was 3 of us. I'm gonna buy us all drinks, 2 Coronas and a gin and tonic or something to celebrate. And he's like, yep, that's $120. I'm like, that's $240.
As the
like 2 Coronas and a gin.
God.
Drink that for the rest of the day. I can't.
It's your last drink that I'm getting you guys.
That was the only annoying thing, but other than that, it was rad.
Okay, I would think we should probably wrap it up. Before we do finish up, I think is there anything that you'd probably like to pass on to? I think probably more like the up and coming runners who are looking to get into this. It might be physically, mentally, setting goals. What do you think is probably the best bit of advice that you pass on to your clients or to people who talk to you?
Make running fun. So if you are a social person, join a run club. If you like getting out into the bush, get out into the bush. It has to be fun. If you're not enjoying it, it's not going to be worth it. It does get easier as well. Running is one of those things where it's always hard at the start and it will get easier. And set yourself a goal. I think goal-driven people, it's just something to motivate you to get up in the morning. So yeah, make it fun, set yourself a goal. It does get easier. And if you do need some accountability, there's some incredible run coaches out there. They'll guide you, particularly if you've got a history of injury prevention. History of injuries. Yeah, that's probably
So good. Hey, thank you so much for coming. I'm so glad that we did the Gold Coast Ambassador.
yeah, it was fun.
We get the call up to do it next year. Fingers crossed. Hope they're listening now. No, but thank you. Like, I'm so pumped that I got to meet you. I really enjoyed this conversation. I think there's some really great learnings, and keen to do a trial one day. Maybe like a bit slower. We'll go slow. But yeah, no, pumped. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.